What's going on, guys? Welcome back to this shop. This video is going to be all about hours on a bike. What is too many hours? And just so you know, you really can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Just got to get that off the top, right off the rip. Anyway, we have this KX250 right here, and this is the motivation for this video. Now, the owner of this bike, Jacob, I have told him many times, look, just put this money in a newer, fresher bike. You'll get more out of it that way. But he has an emotional attachment to this bike for some reason, and so he wants to keep fixing it. And so here it is right here. We just had to put a new crank in it. Well, here you go. Here's what we pulled out. Check this out. Now, this crank wasn't that old, didn't have that many hours on it. I think what happened was he forgot to mix some premix in his fuel and basically ran it dry in oil, but it is what it is. I'll start with the fresh tank of fuel when I go to fire it up for the first time. In general, the younger the bike, the better. Less hours is better, and more hours is not as good. But there are exceptions to everything. So we have my wife's YZ125 right here. Everyone knows that bike. You've seen it on the channel a ton. It's at 400 and something hours now. Oh, let's get up in here. Yeah, 401 hours. In the 400 hours on this bike, I have not had to get into the bottom end. It is still the original crankshaft. I have replaced the cylinder or replated it, I think 2 or 3 times. Obviously multiple pistons, you got to replace them quite often on a 125. Original swing arm bearings, original linkage bearings. I think I replaced the lower shock bearing once. I think I replaced the front wheel bearings once, maybe twice. Original rear wheel bearings. Now, and original steering bearings. The bike is tight. If you wiggle it, everything is tight. Everything's good. This is a good solid bike. You can see right here the wear. Yeah, it's 400 hours. That sucker, it's probably almost due for a new shifter lever. It's worn so flat right here. But again, she doesn't ride it hard, and I work on them for a living, so I maintain it for her, and it's done good. This same bike in a young, fast rider's hand, no matter how well you maintain it, it's probably not going to be as good at 400 hours. It's just how it goes. So, there's exceptions to everything, but in general, the lower the hours, the better. It's still as tight feeling as like maybe a 40 or 50 hour bike when I ride it. When I test ride it every so often, I'm like, this thing is just tight. But again, she doesn't beat up on it very hard, and it's maintained really good. But also in general, and for me, I consider a high hour bike 200 hours. After 200 hours, it's kind of like in the car world. It used to be 100,000 miles. Anything more than 100,000 miles, it was considered like high mileage. I know today it's a little bit different. These cars nowadays, we can get a lot of mileage out of them. But yeah, 200 hours is quite a bit of hours for me, a faster rider on the track. I'm usually getting rid of my bikes by 200 hours. My older YZ250 here, she has over 200 hours on it. And I'm going to keep her around. I'm just going to use her for hair scrambles and stuff like that. But I maintained it very well. It's really still just as tight as a new bike for the most part. My wife's 250F right here, it has probably about 10 hours on it now. Now, the 4-strokes, generally, they're going to be really solid up to about 100 hours as far as maintenance. Like, for instance, a 450 4-stroke, if you really wanted to, you could run that piston, the first original piston, all the way up to 100 hours. As long as you don't have any electrical issues from using pressure washers, which has been very common lately. I've been seeing a lot of bikes with electrical issues due to pressure washers. As long as you kind of avoid the pressure washers, these modern day 4-strokes, again a 450, if you wanted to, you can push it to 100 hours without doing much of anything. They're pretty solid up to 100 hours. But where the 4-strokes really can start to bite is after 200 hours. No matter how well you maintain it, you do all your top ends on time, timing chains, you replace parts as they need to be replaced. The problem with the 4-strokes is you have a lot more parts. So you have intake valves, exhaust valves, and there's just a lot more going on. These parts do have a lifespan. There comes a point where they got to be changed out. Even if a valve looks perfectly fine, somewhere after 200 hours, it can just drop the head off the valve. It can just drop a valve out of nowhere. It's a perfectly fine running bike, and the head of the valve just falls off. Because of that, I usually suggest on the 4-strokes replacing all the valves at 200 hours if you're going to run it past 200 hours, just to be safe, because you don't need that happening out of the blue. There's no warning when it happens. It just happens. But that's where 4-strokes start to bite you, is after 200 hours. Up to 200 hours though, as long as you keep up with all your maintenance, they're pretty solid for the most part. 2-strokes are a little bit different as far as, like, we don't have valves to worry about and stuff like that. We do have to do our top ends a little more often than you would on a 4-stroke. And I actually have a video, I'll put a link in the description, my opinion of the difference between owning a 4-stroke and a 2-stroke. If you're interested in that, check down the description. But you know, 2-strokes, they nibble at you a little more financially, little nibbles here and there. With the 4-strokes, financially, I mean, you can just throw regular gas in, you don't have to run premix. That saves a little bit of money and that kind of stuff. But when they bite, they can bite hard financially, and that's, so they kind of equal out in the end, in my opinion. But no matter how well you maintain a bike, each individual rider is just gonna have an hour limit on a bike, depending on how hard you ride. Obviously, my wife has 400 hours on that, and that thing's still tight and good. For me, 400 hours would be way over the top, because things are gonna wear out, and stuff that you don't even think about, because they typically don't give you any indication that it's wearing out until after 200 hours. Things like, even inside the shock parts can start to wear out. Little things like the shift shaft that goes through the motor here, on these YZ250s, they don't use a bearing. It just goes right through the case, and that can get a little sloppy. This one's nice and tight because it's low hours, but it can get a little sloppy through age, and the only way to fix that is replace the case. On your cylinder here, where the pipe slides on, this cylinder's not that old, so it doesn't have that much wear, but you can see where the O-rings are already starting to wear into it. They can dig out some pretty big grooves here, and the only way to fix that is replace the whole cylinder. Spokes can start sitting deeper into the hub, just wearing into the hub, and the only way to fix that is to replace the whole hub. Front brake lines get worn out just from sliding up and down through this loop right here. For the carbureted bikes, the carburetors can just get worn out after a while, just from the sliding up and down. Oh, that's another thing that's been replaced since YZ125. We did replace the carburetor at about 300 hours. And on the 4-strokes, even the cylinder head, yes, you could put new valves in at 200 hours and extend the life of the cylinder head, but at some point it's going to need new valve guides and possibly valve seats, or have your valve seats reground. Now, that's not the best way to fix them. The best way to fix them is just to replace the cylinder head, because in my experience, having the head reworked is never as reliable and never as long living as a brand new cylinder head would be. But that does happen at some point, and that can get pretty expensive. So what I'm basically trying to say is, there comes a point where to keep the bike up to that new bike feeling, it's going to cost pretty much about as much money as it would be just to go get a new bike. Because again, for the first 100 to 200 hours, you're going to have a solid bike that's nice and tight, and it's not like digging in your pocket and pulling all your cash out all the time. It's yeah, you're gonna have to do normal maintenance stuff, pistons and wheel bearings when that pops up, chains and sprockets and stuff like that. As long as you don't have any oddball failures from something stupid happening, for the most part, you're gonna have a better experience. You're gonna go to the track, the bike's gonna be more reliable, and it's going to do you good. Now, from a mechanic's perspective, I'd much rather work on a young bike than I would a old bike. And I'm talking about old in hours, not in years, but maybe even both. A younger bike is just more cut and dry. All the hardware is correct. Throughout the years, people have a tendency to start putting Home Depot hardware in places where it shouldn't be, and just doing whatever it takes to get through another weekend. And that really makes it tough on your mechanic. Or if you were God wrenching on your own bike, that makes it tough on you. But again, as a mechanic, I would much rather work on a young bike than I would an old bike. Most dealerships and motorcycle shops these days will not work on a bike after it's 10 years old, and for good reason. First off, it's a lot harder and time consuming to work on an older bike, but another reason why is if the customer, when they receive the bill, if it's more than they expect, they're like, you know what, y'all can keep that bike, I'm not coming back for it. They know they can, if it's just a 5-year-old bike, they can put it on the showroom floor, get their money back for it. But if it's a 20-year-old bike that's all clapped out, they might not get enough money for it to cover that repair bill. Now, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, which I believe most of you guys that watch my channel are do-it-yourselfers, that's why you're watching this channel, a younger hour bike's going to do you better as well, because when you go to do a repair on the bike, there's a lot of little things that you might miss, little wear areas inside the motor and stuff that you just don't quite have the experience to know, hey, I better look and check this area out real good, or make sure this is done properly right here, because you just don't have that experience. So if you're doing a top end on your own bike and you're just a do-it-yourselfer, a young hour bike, you just pull the old piston out. You can follow a video on YouTube or whatever, put a new piston in the gaskets, torque it right, it's good to go. But when you're dealing with a high hour bike, the job is not as cut and dry. There's going to be a lot more little areas that you need to check and make sure they're not just showing their age, and maybe that part needs to be replaced. Like this KX250 I was working on right here, we had to get a new power valve. I don't know what you call this thing, plunger, tongue, whatever. We had to get this, right, for the power valve. Reason being was, if you look closely right there, you'll see it's worn in right here. And what that was causing was, when the power valve opens all the way, it's supposed to lift this tongue up all the way when it opens. And when it closes down, you see how the tongue falls down, and it's supposed to lift it up. Well, with that little bit of play, it was still allowing it to wiggle like this. Now, an inexperienced mechanic, do-it-yourselfer, might not notice that. They might just clean the power valve, and it looks nice and shiny, and it's looking good, put it back in, and run it. But an experienced mechanic will know to check that kind of stuff. And that's where, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, owning a young bike, no more than 100 to 200 hours can save you money and time down the road, because you're going to overlook this kind of little stuff. It's just going to happen. And if you're not a do-it-yourselfer and you're paying someone to do the job, well, you're going to get a bigger repair bill, because the bike's older, and older bikes take more time. They're going to run into strip bolts, stuff doesn't match. They're going to run into odd stuff like this. It's going to take more time. They're now going to have to stop the job, order one of these up, that kind of stuff, And so even if you're not a do-it-yourself and you're paying someone to do the job, your repair bill will be less on a younger bike. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and buy a brand new bike and always buying brand new bikes, right? My wife's 25 YZ250F here, we got it with an hour and a half on it. Guy rode it a couple times, realized it wasn't for him, so we got it for a pretty good price. My YZ125 here, I picked this up with I believe it was like 8 hours, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 8.5 hours on it. My YZ250 right here, I picked it up with 15 hours on it. This YZ125, we picked it up, I think it had an hour and a half, 2 hours on it. And this one right here, I wasn't quite sure on the hours, but the kid I bought it from, he pretty much just rode it on his ranch farm, or a big property he had. And it was a stock looking bike with the stock rear sprocket, stock rear chain, stock tires, all that kind of stuff. I estimate it probably had about 15 hours on it, him just, fiddle farting around on it, and it was a good tight bike. And plug another video in here down in the description. I'll have a link to a video where I kind of walk you through how to tell if a bike is low hours or not. So if you're shopping for a good used bike, because you can save a lot of money by picking these bikes up used, but you want to get them low hour. You don't want to get a bike that has a lot of extra parts on it and it's been wrenched on. You want something no one's ever wrenched on before. But if you're interested in that, check down in the description. There'll be a link to that video where I walk you through looking for all that kind of stuff, so you can pick out a good bike. But now, I'm not saying you need to get rid of your old bike. I'm saying as bikes become older, they kind of have a different place in this world. They're not really a track bike anymore, so to say, or maybe a hardcore hair scramble race bike or whatever. They're more just, play bike. I get it. There's a lot of guys that watch this channel and they have like a 1998 CR250 or 03 KX250, and they like their bike. They live on a farm, they play ride, whatever, and that's all good. I'm really speaking more to the guy that rides pretty much every weekend. When he unloads his bike at the track, he expects it to make it to the end of the day with no issues. He doesn't want to be farting with it all the time. He wants to ride, and he wants to ride good and have a good riding experience on a good tight bike. That's really what this video is targeting towards them type of riders. Because what becomes difficult with the bike when it becomes really old is parts availability. This power valve right here, we were not able to buy a new one. We had to buy a good used one on eBay, picked it up for $250. That's a lot of money for this little part, but because it's kind of rare now to find one in good shape, which the new one's already in the cylinder waiting to go on the motor here. But also we have crankshafts, right? This is a Wiseco crankshaft. When bikes become older, you can't get new crankshafts for them anymore. You have to go with your aftermarket ones, as long as they still make them. Wiseco, Hot Rod, them type of cranks. And after a while, they don't even make them anymore for them bikes. They become really old. And then you're stuck only buying rod kits like Pro X rod and bearing kits. And you have to have the cases, you know, I mean the cranks pulled apart, replace the rod bearing, and then press back together, trued and all that. And that's all good. And some people think, well, that's good as long as you can keep rebuilding them. The issue is, even at some point, even these case halves wear out. You see the shininess right here? That's that bearing moving around a little bit on this shaft. Now, the reason it does that is because this crank became a little bit out of true at some point, and it just starts wobbling around, and it just starts moving around, and it starts wearing into this. I've seen these dug in pretty good, where the new crank bearing just slides on like no big deal, and it's all wiggly on there. It's not fitting tight at all. It should be tight like this one is. You can't pull it off. That's how they should be. I've seen it where you can go just slide them on and off because it's just worn out. Cranks become worn out after a while. You only can rebuild them so many times too, because every time you pull them apart, press them back together, the pin now fits in here a little bit looser, and they're not going to hold true quite as well. They become pretty loose after a while. So if you're going to use a bike every weekend and ride it hard, and you think you're going to keep that old bike forever, it's only going to become feasible for so long, and there's going to become a point where you're working on it much more and searching for parts really hard just to keep it up and going. It's probably just going to be better just to get a nice, fresh, low-hour bike, honestly, if you want to ride every weekend. And the same goes for you four-stroke guys, the carbureted four-strokes. Oh, man, the 05 CRF 450, 08 CRF 450, the best 450 ever made, right? Man, them carburetors have become old. And you might be lucky, you might have a good one, but as they wear out, they become really hard to hold a good setting. And it seems like you can get the idle right, but then it hangs, the idle hangs, or you can get it to run good, but then it doesn't idle good, and you're chasing it left or right. What it really needs is a new carburetor. The issue is you can't buy a new carburetor for them from the dealership anymore. The only way to get a new carburetor for it would be go with the Chinese aftermarket one, and we all know how them Chinese aftermarket carburetors are. On some bikes they work, you know, maybe like your little CRF 50s or little play bikes or whatever, but on your more complicated carburetors that come on your 450s and 250F motocross bikes, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. And sure, you can go on eBay, maybe pick up a good used one, but how do you know if it's really good until you clean it all up, put it on the bike, try to adjust it in, and see what you got? And who knows, you might just end up with another carburetor that acts like your old carburetor, because they've all gotten old. There are still a few out there that are doing good, but a lot of them that I see, they're definitely pretty old at this point. And again, I'm not dogging older bikes. I love older bikes. I think they're cool. I like to test ride when people let me test ride. If I had the space, I'd own some of them, but they would be for nostalgic reasons only, for me at least. What I am more than anything else is a rider, and I want to ride, and I want to ride a lot. And when I go out and ride, I want it to be a good day. I don't want to be wrenching on the bike much. I just want a good solid ride. Alright, so check down the description. I actually have 3 links. One on how I wash my bike, if you're just curious, since, like I mentioned, pressure washers, I've been seeing a lot of issues lately. People lately have been using pressure washers more than ever before, and I'm seeing bikes as low as 7 hours with electrical issues and such because of pressure washers, as well as they seem that it's just going to push the water right into your bearings. Again, 400 hours, original linkage bearings and swing arm bearings, because I don't use a pressure washer on it. So check down in the description for a link to that video, as well as the 2 other videos I mentioned. One, how to spot a low hour bike when you're shopping for a good used bike, and the difference between owning a 4-stroke and a 2-stroke from a rider perspective, as well as a mechanic's perspective. And lastly, I'll end this video with this. If your bike's old and it's just breaking down on you too much and parts are wearing out too quickly, you're finding it's just kind of clapped out and you want to sell it, try to sell it in the best condition that you can get it up to, because you're going to be, basically you're handing the next guy your problems is what you're doing. So get it in the best shape that you can reasonably get it up to, or sell it being 100% honest with its issues. Don't, just be honest. It's the best thing to do. You'll be surprised. Honesty goes a long ways. There was a guy looking to sell his bike, and he had a drain bolt on his 250F that was stripped out, and he was having to use like Teflon tape, plumber's tape around it to get it to hold when he put the bolt in. He asked me, should I not tell the person that I'm selling the bike to that it's stripped out, or should I tell him? I said, no, tell him. Definitely tell him. You'll be amazed. People will still buy it. And I think he only had to drop the price like $300 because of that. It wasn't bad at all. So just be honest with the person when you go to sell the bike. And if the bike's so clapped out, at some point they're just a parts bike. Sell it to someone that's just going to part the bike out, sell the parts on eBay or locally or whatever, or use it for his own other project bike he has. At some point, a bike's just going to become a parts bike. We just can't keep them up and running forever. It's just how it goes. Beavis, jeez, you won't even let me make a video. Got roosters around here everywhere. Alright, that's pretty much a wrap. Appreciate you guys watching. This weekend, I'm taking my YZ250 two-stroke out. We're actually going to be going to Days City on Saturday morning, taking their riding class. The wife enjoys taking that class. I have a good time riding, too. I usually get about an hour and a half on the clock while I'm there, so that's really all I want to do is ride. And I can do that. So I hope to see you guys out there. Hope you guys have a great weekend of riding wherever you're at. Be safe, and I'll catch you in the next video.